All right, folks. Thanks to everyone in the chat room that showed up for this episode of This Week in Photo. This is episode number 516. We're going to start it in just a second. Since I get my brain together. All right, here we go.
And we're going to hear that, Mike, right?
Yeah, they hear me, and they hear you too right now.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
All right, here we go. Quiet on the set. Quiet on the set. Here we go. All right. Okay, here we go. In this episode of This Week in Photo, it's all about fake and fake news. This is TWiP. If you've watched any kind of news lately, you've been hearing the term fake news and, all this sort of things about how the media is disingenuous. But one of the things that caught my eye was the idea of fake video, and the idea, basically, they're calling this technique, I guess, it's called deep fakes, and it's the idea of using artificial intelligence to superimpose the face of a celebrity or anyone, you, me, or any of us, onto someone else and put them in precarious positions or make them say things that they wouldn't have ordinarily said, adding to the issue of fake news. So today, to talk about this stuff, is LensBaby co-founder, Mr. Craig Strong, joining us to chime in with his thoughts. Hey, Craig, how's it going?
Hey, everybody.
All right, man. And also Uncle Doug Kaye. Uncle Doug's here to chime in. Doug, I know you always have an opinion or two about this stuff, right?
No, but this isn't actually me. This is Frederick's head on my body using fake video.
Yeah, superimposed.
Yeah.
Soon we'll be able to do that. I'll just be able to write out TWiP.
I'm not really here.
Yeah, you're not really here. So before we dive into the topic du jour, there's a couple things I want to talk about beyond the deep fakes and fake news stuff. But I want to find out what's going on with you guys. Craig, what's been going on in your world? What's new with you?
So let's see. It's almost summertime here in Oregon, and you can see some sunshine coming in. LensBaby's brought out some new stuff lately. We brought out the Burnside 35, and it's a little 2-aperture lens, so it's got 2 different irises, which is kind of cool. That took a lot of my time, but these things are in development for usually about a year and a half, so I'm on to the next thing, which I can't tell you about.
Oh yeah, I'll get it out of you, man. You know how I am.
No, you got it. That's all I got.
So welcome to the show, man. It's good to have you.
Thanks.
All right, and also Doug, what do you got? What do you have going on? Let me guess, you just back from somewhere, or you're about to go somewhere, right?
Yeah, sort of both. I spent a week in Hong Kong doing nothing but taking pictures, and I promised you I'd show this off. Picked up a beautiful Hasselblad 500 cm and 3 lenses, and here we go.
Oh, that sound!
Maybe the best sound in all of photography.
I get a shot.
A Hasselblad bouncing mirror. Love it.
Scary. And you're shooting film. So, whenever, I have to bring this up. Whenever you tell us that you're shooting film, I always ask, before I would ask you, okay, what do you do after you shoot it? And you used to say that, oh yeah, I send it off, I get it scanned, and I get my digital files. I get digital files. Now you're actually processing. So you're processing medium format at home now?
And large format. I'm doing 4x5 with my speed graphics too.
What?
Wow.
Why are you putting yourself through that, Doug?
Is this old film stock, or is this new?
Well, today I shot a new roll of HP5 Plus in the Hasselblad, but I do have some old stuff that I bought out of date film. I had to buy a second refrigerator because my wife got tired of me filling up hers. So I've got old stock. I got old Polaroid film I'm shooting with, stuff that's just a mess. It gets streaks on it and everything.
I love it.
A lot of fun.
Cool.
That's great.
But yeah, awesome. developing, scanning, and doing everything at home now.
Good. Save your money, right?
Yeah, like buying. Well, the good thing is the cameras are cheap.
Yeah, interesting.
Still.
All right, guys, let's dive in, because there's a ton of stuff to talk about. Before we dive into the deep fake stuff, I want to talk about the some of the big news that happened last week, and that was SmugMug acquired Flickr. That just saying that in that order just sounds weird to me. Having worked at Yahoo, it just like. It's wrong some way, but when you fast forward to 2018, it seems right. You guys saw this news, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm envisioning one of those ants carrying that huge leaf, that's like 100 times bigger than the ant. Like Like, it's awesome. I love SmugMug, and hopefully there's going to be some new life into Flickr.
Yeah, I'm wondering what they're gonna do. So Craig, what's your idea of what SmugMug would do? We've all read the releases and the articles and all that, and they said they're not gonna make any substantive changes immediately. Down the road, they may do some integrations. What do you think this time, say 2019, 2020, the SmugMug Flickr product offering is gonna look like?
Well, I don't know that I can predict the future, but it would be awfully nice if the community could have a shot in the arm to it feels like it's just been kind of lagging, and there's been less and less of a reason for people to really invest their time there. And if there could be just more of a sense of community. I mean, we all in our culture, in our world, are lacking community, and any place we can find that. And have meaningful things in common that we can come together around, that's great. And I think that that would be my hope, is that whatever they do, and I wouldn't even know where to start,
Yeah.
That community can be reinvigorated and become really a something that people feel some enthusiasm about.
Yeah. And Doug, I'll throw the same thing at you. What do you think? I mean, are you a Flickr user, or
I
have
am.
you are? So when
Flickr,
you
I have
saw
a
this,
Flickr a Pro account.
did this make you feel good, or did it make you feel bad, indifferent?
Well, Flickr was dying, so it's got to be good news for everybody involved. They're going to hopefully keep it alive. I think it's a fascinating thing. People were guessing, what were the terms of the acquisition? SmugMug's a private company. The terms aren't disclosed. Wouldn't surprise me if they got Flickr for $1.
Yeah.
Verizon, who owns Flickr now, owns Yahoo and Flickr, is trying to unload this stuff. They're trying to get out of everything. So it's going to be very interesting. Does SmugMug have any community? I don't think of SmugMug as community. I think it is a place where I host my portfolio and I deal with my clients. Is that the same thing for you guys?
I think the fact that you have to ask that question is the answer, right? Because if they had a vibrant community, you would already know about it.
Yeah, I mean, they have community, they have fans, but it's not a social media network place. Flickr was that. Yeah. And it still is to some extent. I think Thomas Hawk did a great editorial sort of about it. I think it's terrific. It means that the community may be revived, because certainly the guys at SmugMug, they're awesome people. I love them all. So they're going to probably do a good job there.
Yeah.
The big challenge is going to keep their costs down, because I assume they also acquired the expenses of the staff. So they've got income from people like me who pay for pro accounts. They've got a staff, so they've got expenses. Does that break even yet? Who knows? But SmugMug as a private company is not going to have a lot of cash. So they're going to have to be real careful with making sure that they keep that in business. But the big thing is, what are they getting in terms of logins and accounts? Because I think I now use my Yahoo ID for my Flickr account. Isn't that right? Isn't that what we use?
Yeah.
Right. So does that mean that suddenly SmugMug has all of our Yahoo logins and authentication? Do they have access to all the Flickr users and all the Yahoo users?
Right. Yeah. Well, they said they weren't doing anything immediately in terms of integrating the databases, but that is a good question, right?
Well, they're not integrating them, but they own one of them.
They own them. Yeah. Yeah.
So, integration is extremely difficult. I've done that in previous lifetimes. That's a very hard thing to do. But in the meantime, they have millions and millions of Flickr users.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Doug, what would you like to see happen? I mean, is it just community? You just want to see?
I'd like to see everybody get along.
All right, Rodney. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Rodney Kaye.
Yeah. No, I think it's just Doug's head on Rodney King's body. I think. Well, I'd love to see the thing fully integrated. I'd love to see the kind of social aspect of Flickr of sharing and community and discussions around specialties like street photography or black and white or film or something like that. All mixed in with my ability to have more portfolios there. I'd like to be able to go into my portfolio site on SmugMug, tag an image, and have it show up on my Flickr stream, and vice versa.
I've got a question for you, Doug. You talked about the price that potentially this was purchased for $1. And I think of several acquisitions by big companies, and that took over a company and then just killed it, or sold it or gave it away to somebody else so they wouldn't be responsible for killing it. Can you think of examples? Because I'm having a hard time thinking of it, of when this scenario ended up going back in time to when the glory days were of that product, or even of reinventing something in a positive way. It feels like it's a really difficult task, and honestly, in today's current age, I'm having a hard time thinking of an example where that worked.
Good
Yeah,
question,
and
Craig.
yeah, so the merging of databases, right? You acquire this, millions of people that join Flickr, say, for the community or specific reasons, and then now
Yeah.
you're saying, hey, we're going to move everything lock, stock, and barrel over here, or we're going to change the way things are done. Yeah, it's challenging, but if anybody can do it, I think SmugMug can do it, which leads
Yeah,
me
I
to
think the Craig's
go ahead.
question though was, can SmugMug bring back the old glory of Flickr? Can they bring back the energy that it had in the very beginning,
Probably not.
or even should they?
Hmm.
Yeah.
The guy, I wanted to say something. I know the guys at SmugMug early on. SmugMug was, I think, the very first large scale user of Amazon Web Services.
Hmm.
I know this because I did a presentation for Amazon at an Amazon meeting with McCaskill's. And a project that I worked on was one of the second big users of Amazon Web Services. They beat us to it. They are technically extremely good over there, really, really good people. And they have they have a they have a reputation at risk here among the photographer community. Flickr's reputation is shot, so that's not the issue.
Right.
So I think uh, I don't know, Craig, if they're going to bring it back. But again, my question is: should they, or should they do something completely different? I don't know. It's a really good question.
The
No,
landscape is different, though,
I,
Doug. Right?
I can't think of an example. Back to your question, Craig. I
Yeah.
can't think of an example of anybody who's successfully integrated a company that was failing and brought it back to its original state.
Right,
That I
because it's the time machine. Because you look at when Flickr was in its heyday and it owned, it was synonymous with photo sharing. There weren't that many large players out there, right? And now we have SmugMug. You got Google Photos. You got Apple vying for your images. You've got, format.com. You've got all these different entities out there that are saying, "Hey, come put your images on us," and they're all really good. So there's choices now. Whereas when Flickr was grown, it was kind of it moved into the neighborhood before anybody got there. So it's to the question of can they bring Flickr back to its earlier greatness? I would argue no. And like you said, Doug, I don't know if you'd want to go back then. Maybe it's time for
Yeah.
something completely different and new and fresh. So I don't know. But the other piece of this is like other companies like 500px, right? So 500px came on strong and then got acquired by some Chinese entity, and things changed over there somewhat, right?
yeah.
So the Uber question for this part of the conversation is what's up with the photo sharing industry, right?
Right.
Is the Flickr SmugMug entity now the 500-pound gorilla that everyone is swimming to catch, or is the idea of putting all your eggs in a particular basket with a username and password with someone like a SmugMug or Flickr, are those days over and we're going to do something completely different? Craig, what do you think?
I try not to predict the future, but
Predict it, man.
it
Come on, this is
it
podcasting.
feels like an uphill slog to try and go back in time. And if the hope of SmugMug is that community that we're not aware of, which it feels like you have the option to make all your galleries public and commentable and searchable and all that. It feels like, as far as we know, that hasn't been as thriving as they like. If they're hoping to bring in uh, what used to be at Flickr, along with their model, which has not gotten maybe the social media traction that they'd hoped for, that doesn't seem likely.
Yeah.
Um, if it's a goodwill gesture to say, hey, we were able to buy this, if we keep this going, we're doing a service to the community. I think that's great. And because there are a lot of people that are going to, always be there, and they're committed to that space. And it sounds like, Doug, you're not planning on canceling your pro membership, and you've got friends there. There's a community, I'm sure. And I do think that there is a service there, and if that's what they're planning on doing, that's a huge service to that community.
Yeah, I agree. I think also I mean, if you look at it from just numbers, the whiteboard that I'm sure the SmugMug guys were in front of for hours and hours as they were figuring out how they're going to do this, I would bet part of that math boils down to Flickr has X million number of users. This percentage, who knows what the number is, this percentage we could probably convert to paying SmugMug accounts. Right? And a small number versus, multiplied by a very big number equals a huge number of revenue. So this could, if SmugMug executes right, this could equal a huge growth spurt for them, right? In terms of just users that come in, even if it's a tiny percentage of the overall user base that Yahoo is bringing to the table. Now, if it's a large percentage of that user base, then it's a completely different company now, right? It's gigantic.
And if there's an opt-in integration of your high-res files from Flickr, then that makes it easy to go to the next step in terms of all the excellent pro options that are offered through SmugMug.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it's going to be an interesting space to watch. Like I said, there's lots of players out there, and I have a SmugMug account, I have a Flickr account, I have a PixieSet account, I've got a Format.com account. I've got accounts all over the place, and that's part of the problem, right? Because you want to pick one horse and ride it, but then things keep happening, and shiny object, and you get lured to the other one. So I don't know. I need someone, Uncle Doug. I need somebody to tell me where to put all my stuff. Where should I put it, Uncle Doug?
Well, yeah, it's hard to say. Everywhere, just put it everywhere. If SmugMug asked me, and they didn't, the first thing I would do is sort of stabilize the patient. I would try and, first of all, make sure that I wasn't losing cash out of the Flickr situation. And what that probably means is laying off staff, because you can't quickly increase revenues. Yep. So I would just make sure that thing is alive. I would try and make it do what it's doing as well as I could before I worried about integration, because integration is an expensive and complicated step. The fact is that there's not a huge amount of overlap. I mean, the big overlap is that both places, for some people, are sites where they upload everything. Well, if they can reduce it by one, like your problem, Frederick, of having accounts everywhere, if you can reduce by one the number of places that you have to upload things, that's better.
Yeah.
But, if SmugMug doesn't have social, and we don't think they do, that they don't have as much sharing, if they don't have discussion forums and groups, because the groups in Flickr are extremely valuable.
Yeah.
Then they have the potential of bringing in things that they never had before. And what they've really got in their existing service is really good portfolio sites, print sales, licensing, things like that. So, do they want to move more into stock photography? There's so many possibilities for them. The other thing, of course, is that, if you look at the social aspect of photography, where were we? We started with Flickr, right? That was I think pretty much the big one.
Pretty much,
Google Plus came along. Google Plus looked like it was going to be terrific. All of us, I mean, I don't know about you, Craig, but I know Frederick and I met pretty much on Google Plus.
Yeah.
That looked, we just loved it. And then Google just said, forget it, we're out of this game. They just let that go. 500px has always been sort of a little bit of an odd one, because they seem to specialize in fancy pictures of pretty women.
I think that's what just was being shown to you, Doug.
Okay, it knew my preferences.
It's like Netflix, man.
But now the big social network for photography is Instagram, and it has the twist that it's not just for serious photographers; it's for amateur photographers too. Everybody's using Instagram to share. Yeah. So, the sort of top of the mountain or whatever for photo sharing, and the social aspects of photography is shifting around.
Hey, I wonder,
This,
that's a good point, Doug. I wonder if this part of the play and part of SmugMug's execution strategy is to, seize on the blood in the water that is Facebook with all this
yeah,
stuff that's going on with them. And like, hey, we're going to build the alternative to Instagram. We're going to synthesize something from SmugMug and Flickr, put it together, and make a new kind of Instagram that has everything that you wanted in there. And it's
yeah. When
private.
when when Facebook has to pay $1 billion in fines for giving away all my friends' private information, thank you very much. And they will get some heavy fines out of this thing. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure.
Yeah, but
Um,
Zuckerberg will find $1 billion in the couch kitchens.
that's
Right?
right. Well, maybe they'll pay for it by selling off Instagram. I don't know.
Maybe. Well, cool, guys. Well, let's move on from that. The main topic that I wanted to talk about today is this idea of deep fakes. And this was interesting. When I saw this story, I was like, well, because I read it. I forget what site I read it on. I think it was on Vice. It was actually a Vice video I saw. And they were basically explaining, they're using this AI based technology in some cases, and some really cheap software that's available to everyone that will do this face replacement stuff, a la like Snapchat and all these other type applications. But it does it realistically, very realistically. So it's hard to tell if you're not really looking that it's not actually the person. And part of the ways that this started getting noticed was in the pornography industry. So they were putting celebrity faces on porn stars and have the porn stars obviously do whatever they do, right? So now your favorite actor or actress is doing that, which is interesting, but it's not them. So obviously for the actor or actress, it's kind of distressing to see yourself in that position. But if you fast forward away from the porn industry, porn is always the first adopters of any new technology like this. But if you fast forward to other things like news and this whole fake news thing that we keep hearing about all the time, now it becomes scary because now you can make politicians or different groups say things to feed into the confirmation bias of their particular group. And so you could say, I know politician X is crooked and a liar or whatever. And now you can have them actually saying things to confirm that. So Craig, so you saw this? I know you saw the articles that I put in the show notes. What's your initial feeling about this? Is it someone sent me a message on an email after I posted the video, and they're like, this is a non-starter because someone will create an algorithm to sniff out fake videos and then get rid of them. I don't subscribe to that. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't subscribe to that either. I think we're in for a wild ride, or continuation of this wild ride that we're on, as it comes to what's true and what's not.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like it's coming down to the whole idea of interpersonal communication is my experience and my feelings in the moment is all I can really own and count on. And because it feels like the bedrock of the things that we look to evaluate, to say, okay, this is what I think and this is what I think is true about what's going on around me in the world, it's being shaken. So I think that there may be technology to debunk that, but is it too late? Because these things, the moment they're out, within minutes, the things that go viral are, you can't pull them back.
It's too late, right? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a bunch of things that I heard early in this election cycle that I read one little thing. I didn't go to verify it with any other source. And still, when those topics come up in my mind, I think something that I know is not true, because it did eventually get debunked, but it's still in there. There is still that seed of doubt about this thing that everyone was saying and was getting such prominent exposure at the time. And I think it's a strange time we're in, and we're all guinea pigs. Like, new technology comes out. What does this do to you individually? What does this do to your family? What does this do to your culture, to your country, to your world, your planet? It's crazy.
Scary. It's scary. Yeah. And like you're saying, on the one hand, you say, you know, you read an article and it has some tidbit of information in there, and you're like, it could be true or not, but it's in your head, and you're walking around. Then later that day, you see a video, again, back to the confirmation bias thing, right? You see a video a fake video
Right.
that confirms what you just read, and you're like, okay,
Yeah,
of course it must
that
be true.
raises it to a whole other level.
Yeah.
And you know, the result of that, and I think in one sense where I have hope is that I think a lot of people have been inoculated, just going, oh wow, I believed that and it wasn't true, you know, as things get debunked. And then the question is, okay, what do we believe? You know, I don't even look at my Facebook feed, or if I do, it's just, you know, a few close friends. And I, you know, if there's anything that diverges from my worldview, I'm like, or what I'm interested in, I'm like, I don't want to go down that path because I have no idea if it's leading me somewhere that's just complete hogwash.
Yeah, yeah. Doug Kaye, what do you think? So from the top, when you see this technology, does it frighten you? Like, or are you thinking, well, you know what, this is just like any other technology, we'll learn to live with it? Like, I have my own opinions. I'm curious what you think.
Well, from a technological point of view, it doesn't surprise me, certainly. But I think that, Craig nailed the issue here, which is, as a culture, as both individuals and the society as a whole, we're not prepared to cope with this. We're going to have to have some new paradigms, some new ways of dealing with stuff. I was just thinking while Craig was talking, the internet, not the internet, but the web is coming up on being about 25 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say early 90s. And, we thought we had to deal with a lot of new things, like, the quick speed with which we get information, the fact that information is available globally. This is stuff that wasn't available 30 years ago. So,
Right.
People who aren't old enough aren't going to remember that. But I think that, and fake news, of course, there was always the potential of fake news. Even in print, there was fake news. But it's become amplified. It's a bit on steroids. Well, now that you've got something like this, where the results are so convincing, it can be so believable that we really don't have a way to use the content itself to determine the authenticity. All right. So authenticity has to come separate from the content.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to develop new ways of dealing with it. And my guess is that it doesn't get taken seriously until it affects individuals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that when something I do is fake, identity theft is an example of things that people don't take seriously until it happens to them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or they may worry about it. But uh, I think that uh, I think we're going to have to go through a phase of figuring out how to deal with this, because the solutions to fake news and fake, what are we calling this? Deep fake.
Yeah, deep fakes.
They're not out there yet. They're not out there, and we're gonna have to realize we need solutions to that, because otherwise, what can we trust? When something shows up on Facebook. Um, there are a lot of times where I see something and I want to believe it's true. And sometimes I go over the line and I accept something as being true that turns out that isn't. And it's very annoying.
Yeah, well, that's the key, right? Because you have the intelligence to go find out, is this thing that I thought was true? Am I going to believe it on face value? Not everyone has that level of intelligence.
I'm not always good enough, though. I'm not always good enough to do that. I've been suckered into things and had people have to point. I haven't reposted anything fake, luckily, but I've certainly been involved with following something, believing it, and then learning it was totally fake.
Yeah, it's scary, because you think of like the Me Too movement, right? And say there's some sort of litigation case going on with this Me Too stuff, and let's say whoever is accused is innocent, and the prosecuting side needs evidence so they can create some they could create evidence to sway the jury, right, if they wanted to, and by the time they find out it's fake, it's all over, and that's the kind of stuff that scares me, when you can influence something knowing that ultimately it'll be found out that this was fake, but by then the damage is done. Craig, how do you safeguard against that?
So I do think that there are tools out there that give some hope toward this. I think artificial intelligence, I think segregated witness, where if you could combine those two things, where you had 100,000, a million computers out there looking at each piece of information, while they know, Watson apparently has read everything and seen everything that,
Yep.
bit of data that exists on planet Earth, about me, about you. And if there were 100,000 versions of Watson out there that were each going in and bearing witness to if this is authentic or not, and we were able to look at, um, potentially before it even gets to us, uh, the the veracity of that particular piece of media, um, using, and that's, I'm looking at something that has created, blockchain has created, cryptocurrency and things that you can't counterfeit.
Yeah.
um, and if that technology and AI came together, potentially there would be a safeguard if there were enough of a segregated witness of all these computers out there bearing witness to the fact that this is fake, this is true. You know, it the data is, something like that. It would be difficult to come out without. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm not Watson.
Yeah,
Um,
it's scary. The
and
whole thing is scary, but I think there's also, so we're talking mostly about the negative side of this stuff. Like
yeah,
any technology has a positive and a negative, right? And I think if you look at it from a what could happen positively standpoint, then there's, I mean, let's put this right on the edge of positive and negative, because there's the idea of, this whole catfishing thing with online dating where people upload photos of themselves from like 50 years ago or whatever,
yeah,
and then when you go on a real date, it's like, hey, that's not you. But imagine if you could do a call like this, a video call, and actually have a conversation with somebody as someone else,
right.
right? Because that's, I mean, if you can do it with software, you can do it real time like we're doing here, right? And have it, if it's, you fast forward, 5 years, 10 years, and the technology and processing power has gotten to a point where it's indistinguishable from reality. Anybody can be Doug Kaye, Frederick Van Johnson,
Yeah,
Denzel Washington, Angelina Jolie. You could buy an avatar and become that person and look photorealistic like that person. Then what happens, Doug? What happens when we get to that point? Because if we're just at the
Well,
beginning of this, that's inevitable, right?
well, we've proven that, because what you're seeing right now is how I looked 20 years ago. You know,
Wow.
this is not the real me
That's
today.
young Doug. Okay, got
That's right.
it.
Um, yeah, I don't know, other than being technologically very amazing. I don't know
Yeah.
what the upside is to this. I mean, it's great for the marketing world. I mean, it's great for, cinema,
Hmm.
when you can do all sorts of things.
Oh
But
yeah,
I think
anchor jobs are over then, right?
yeah, I think the real issue is the one we're talking about here, which is this is just sort of the latest technological aspect of fake news or fake
Hmm.
anything.
Hmm.
And the first thing, I mean, who knows? So you've got to make people aware that that they're looking at a lot of fake stuff. You have to make them care,
Yeah.
right.
because part of the problem today, especially in our political world, is that people are watching things that are fake. They don't know, they may know they're fake, and they don't care that they're fake.
Right.
It becomes entertainment, to
Hmm.
get that sort of echo chamber reinforcement that you get from fake news.
Yeah.
So we're going to need some cultural shifts.
Well,
So
oh, go ahead,
and
Craig.
okay, so the concern I have here, I do believe that in general things are getting much better. I mean, you look at history, recent history, and the human condition is infinitely better than it was, 100 years ago,
Hmm.
and dramatically than it was 50 years ago. I think is this has potential to bring us two steps back, and but I do believe ultimately we're going to figure this out. Question is for me, how soon do we figure it out, and how soon do we start to care? Because those two things are just like you said, Doug. If you don't care, if it's not really a concern for you, um, then you're just going to continue to go down that path. I do believe that there is, as we face crises as a people, uh, as humanity, that's when we take a look and we say, okay, we don't want that to happen again. And I believe there will be crises around this. I hope they aren't, catastrophic for a huge number of people, but they will be for some.
Yeah, yeah, and the other piece of it is like if you, everything has a backlash. It feels like, So what's the backlash from this? Is it, you can't trust anything, or you're not sure what you can trust, so you might as well not trust anything online, and maybe
Right.
that'll trigger a backlash into reality. People will start actually interacting in the real world with each other.
No, that's not going to
It's
happen.
blasphemy. I don't
You know,
know.
somebody in the YouTube chat named WorkPick said reality TV was the beginning of the end in some ways, and that happens to be true, by the way. And what created reality TV was the Hollywood writers' strike. So let's blame the writers' strike for all of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've said it. I think it's two things are going to have to happen. One is people are going to have to care. That's only going to happen really when it starts to affect them individually. And then we're going to, whether the solutions are purely social or behavioral, or whether the solutions come with some technology, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, and a lot of it's going to, as we see this technology advance and mature, a lot of it's going to play to the vanity of people, right? So as you get older, if somebody gave you the proposition, if you live most of your life online, and most of the people are online, and you have the ability to look like you looked when you graduated high school, even though you're 75 years old, wouldn't you take that opportunity? I mean, it's almost like someone offering you the fountain of youth. You could say, hey, you could be young forever. No one will ever know. You're never going to meet any of these people. You're going to look completely photorealistic when you see them in Skype or on Zoom or on Google Plus Hangouts or whatever. It's all going to look fine. It's still going to be you, just an earlier version of you. Is that
No, I
disingenuous?
wouldn't do that. No,
you wouldn't do it.
Not at all.
Why not?
I'd much rather have a realistic interaction with people. I don't.
All right, Doug.
I'm old.
So
I'm
what if
old
all
enough.
what if all your high school friends looked like your high school friends looked in high school? Would you do it then?
No, I don't think so. I don't. How about you?
It's tough, right? It's a tough
think
question.
That'd be fun.
Oh, it'd be fun, and you might do it for something whimsical. But
right.
Would you really want to establish a persona that was fake, that was a 20-year younger you out there?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it just goes, it's a rat hole because it goes deeper and deeper. It's like, okay, that's fun stuff, relatively speaking, but what if more and more job interviews are being conducted online, right? So now you could be somebody completely different, a different version of you, or someone completely different, or someone tailor-made for the position that you want to secure, and then you secure it, especially if it's an online job. You're just like, oh, I need to make sure I'm running Avatar 12B when I meet with, my boss. Right? I mean, that all this stuff is possible. Somebody mentioned, who's it? WorkPix in the chat mentioned Ready Player One, that movie.
Right.
It's kind of like a virtual world, even though they were completely immersed. We're just talking about taking the pixels from the frame that you're looking at and editing them.
Right.
So, I don't know. It's scary. I don't know. I don't know where I fall on it. I like new technologies. I'd like to see where it goes, but I can also see the danger of it, especially considering how the news cycles run these days, and how, like you were saying, Craig, you can't really trust anything, right? So it's scary. It's scary.
Okay. I'm happy to watch. I'm happy to stick with things like bad lip reading.
Yeah, good luck with that. All right, guys. So I want to remind the chat room that we are watching the chat, guys. And Christopher Berry, our illustrious social media maven guru guy, is in there holding it down, and he's collating all the questions that you guys ask so that I can get to them when we get to that segment, which is coming up right after this Pick of the Week segment, which brings me to the Pick of the Week. So, Mr. Strong, what is your Pick of the Week?
My pick of the week is the TWiP PRO Flapjack Studio Bicolor LED Award-winning Studio Edge light. It's
call their marketing department.
Right.
So it's an 18-inch round dual color LED. So you're able to shift from blue to warm, and it's incredibly bright and no flicker. It's just a great replacement for a small softbox and great for video. yeah, it's a lovely light, super compact, super thin, works on battery. You plug it in. I love them.
And it's LED, so it's going to last forever. And that's a PhotoDiox Pro. And of course, I will link to all of our picks in the both the show notes on thisweekinphoto.com and also in the description in the Google or in the YouTube video.
Yep. But yeah, Photodiox makes pretty amazing products, and they make a lot of them. So wading through and finding exactly what's right for you is can be a challenge. But I've been privileged to be able to use a bunch of them, and that one is by far my favorite photo industry lighting product that I've seen in at least this year.
So, Craig, have you moved to primarily shooting with strobe or with LEDs, or you still have strobes in your workflow?
Well, a lot of what we're doing here is video related, and so strobes are kind of difficult to shoot with video unless I guess you're 2 frames a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a much bigger part of the work that we're doing, and most of my work is done shooting in available light. But when I need light, more and more, it's with LEDs.
Very cool. Awesome. Yeah, I shoot with available light too. You know the old joke, right? Any light that's available. So.
Yeah.
Doug Kaye, what about you, man? What's your pick of the week?
Jay, if I'd known Craig was on, I could have picked out my favorite LensBaby as my pick of the week, but I didn't prepare that. But I could have.
Yeah.
And I want to second these LED. I don't know these particular lights. The particular light that looks like an interesting one, but I usually shoot just available light. But I had an assignment recently to shoot an old Steinway piano that was in a completely dark room, and I took just a few LED lights of different shapes, and it was great. I mean, the advantage we all know of continuous is that you can see what you're going to get before you push the button.
Right.
But they're great. They have a lot of power. The batteries in these things last a long time. I don't know, Craig, is that one mains powered or battery powered or both?
Both.
Oh,
yeah,
great.
There's two batteries that snap on the back, and yeah, it goes full power with the batteries for a long time. But what I like about it best is there's no individual bulbs that you have to diffuse. The diffusion's done for you, and so it's just this beautiful panel light, as if you're working with a softbox right off the bat.
And it's 18 inches diameter.
18 inches, yeah.
Looks really nice. Anyway, my pick, maybe you've had it on TWiP recently, I don't know, but this is the Peak Design, what do they call it? The Capture Camera Clip version 2. So what is this thing? This goes onto a strap, and it's hard to tell from this. If you go to the website, you'll find it. It's in the show notes. Will be in the show notes. It's a little clip that you put a little small Arca Swiss plate on your camera, and you can literally just drop it in here. It locks in place. So imagine this is over your shoulder, and you just put your camera in here, and it just sits right here. And then it has a little push button to release. You can lock the push button so it doesn't come out accidentally. There have been a lot of these gadgets. I'm not one who wears a big harness with holsters and all that, but I might go out, for example, let's say I might be out on the street with my little Sony RX100 in addition to a larger camera, and I might just take and just hook that right in there. And if I want to use it, I just unhook it, take a picture. It's only $70, and it includes one of their little Arca Swiss plates. You can't use any Arca Swiss plate. You have to use theirs. But the plate is a real Arca Swiss compatible plate. So if you're out using a tripod, which I did in Hong Kong, for example, just pop this out, put this camera on the tripod, and ready to go. So cool. Really nice little gadget.
So that's a version. It says version 3. What's the differences between that one and the earlier versions?
It's better by 1 or 2.
So that incremental. It looks like your mount on your strap is about as big as your camera there, Doug.
It is almost. The mount is small, but compared to this little guy, yes.
The mount on the camera looks nice and small, but I imagine it could take a nice beefy camera on there as well.
Well, I could probably put my Hasselblad on there like this.
Oh, hello.
Right, there we go. And you could do that, but it would lean out, things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit too much for that.
Maybe I should put my 4x5 speed graphic on one of those little clips.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. Well, cool. Good pick.
Anyway, it's a great little gadget, and I think it's well worth $70. I think it's well priced.
Very cool.
Excellent.
Well,
Thanks
that
for the
will be
heads up.
listed in there as well. I have a pick, but unfortunately, it's in the box because it just got delivered by FedEx, and um, it is the Lumix 200 millimeter f2.8 lens with I think it's a 1.4 extension tube on there. So it's a micro four thirds lens, obviously for Lumix, but it's because it's going on a micro four thirds camera as a 2x crop factor, which means it's actually a 400 millimeter. I'm not even sure what the math with the extender tube on there, what the math is to push that out. Joseph Lanashki will know, or Photo Joseph. So if you go to Photo Joseph's channel, he got one yesterday on loan from Panasonic, and he did an unboxing kind of first look review of the thing. So head over to his channel to check those out after this is over and you finish watching this. But that's my pick of the week, because just looking at the reviews and watching Joseph's video yesterday before mine came, it's a ridiculously cool lens. It is a specialty lens because who needs 400 millimeter focal length? Probably people that are shooting sports or shooting birds and wildlife and that sort of thing. But if you shoot those things and you're on the micro four thirds system, then this kind of lens makes a whole lot of sense. It also has the honor of being, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this is probably the most expensive lens that Panasonic makes. It comes in at just under $3,000 for this thing. So, which means when I'm done playing with it in a couple of days, it's going back in the box and going back to Panasonic. But yeah, it's cool. It's interesting to see where things are going with these lenses for micro four thirds cameras. Doug, are you ever going to come back to the micro four thirds fold?
I don't think so. I've got too many cameras. I'm invested heavily in Leica.
You're all over the place.
Leica and Sony. I can't really afford to go anywhere. I mean, talking about the lens, I mean, here's I won't tell you what I paid for this little puppy. 75 millimeter.
Will you hold that up again? Oh, look at that.
75 millimeter Summicron f2. Bought that used in Hong Kong too.
Wait, Doug gets 2 items?
That's
you
not
can
my
have
pick.
2 if you want it. You got another one? Come on, bring it on, man.
Oh, I did hold up a LensBaby earlier, so you're good.
Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys, let's move into the listener Q&A segment. This is where the listeners can chime in the chat room. Like I said, Chris Berry's in there copying and pasting the questions from listeners into our Google Doc for us to look at. The first question is from WorkPix. This might be hypothetical. WorkPix says, if necessity is the mother of invention, who's the father? And who are the other kids in the family? Doug, this is for you, since you're Uncle Doug.
I am the grandfather of invention. So that's my role here, or the great-grandfather. Great-grandfather
Thank you.
of invention, right?
Invention has been a big part of my life, and I had no idea.
Yeah, you are an inventor, Craig.
That's right. If you want to talk about invention, we got the man here. Come on.
Right. Yeah. People should go.
Don't
I'll
ask
link
me.
to the interview that I did with Craig a while back. Craig, you kind of went through the origin story of LensBaby. It is the quintessential or superhero origin story of guy builds something in his garage and finds out that there's a pent-up demand for it and can't keep up, and then figures it out and all that stuff. So that's
every step along the way was frustration. It was like, I'm frustrated I can't do this, I'm frustrated it costs too much, I'm frustrated it doesn't exist, and so, which isn't very fun. Spending your life frustrated is not a lot of fun. But on the other side, you look back and you go, oh wow, I figured that out. And for me, it was figuring out stuff that other photographers were frustrated with too, or weren't frustrated with, but connected with the solutions that I came up with. So that's kind of fun. It's a huge privilege to be able to create and be frustrated, I guess.
Yeah. I think the one common thread between successful people or inventors, entrepreneurs, etc., is you're in a constant state of frustration, but you don't give up. Right.
Yeah.
So if you had given up at any one of those points of frustration, you're like, oh, I can't build this. This is never going to work. I can't go to WPPI or whatever. Then we would never have the LensBaby models that we have today. Right.
Right. And for me, it took a village, because, I've got a pretty narrow strength set. And so getting a team together that could help with the other things and help motivate me to not give up was a big part of it. So.
Yeah. Love it. Well, good. Thank you for doing that. All right, another question. Another one's from WorkPix. WorkPix is on fire in here. He says, "I'm more interested in finding a way to control my digital assets first." I think this is part of the conversation we were having on Flickr SmugMug. He said, but the question is, there's not likely to be a conflict on terms of service unless you blend the two companies. So
No, he
control of
says,
the digital
is there
assets.
not likely? Yes, he says
Is there not likely to be a
yeah.
conflict of the terms of service unless you blend the two companies? Interesting. I don't know, Doug. What do you think?
Well, he's right. I mean, because certainly we know for a fact that the SmugMug terms of service and the Flickr terms of service must be different because they don't have the same punctuation. But you can, it's easy to change the terms of service. You just issue a notice and send it out. So I'm not worried about that. But they do. I mean, technically, however, the two organizations do have very different attitudes, and part of it has to do with SmugMug coming really in as a portfolio business where you sell prints and license your images, as opposed to Flickr, who has gone more in terms of, we're going to allow people to use your images using a Flickr license or a Creative Commons license, or whatever. So they're very different. And SmugMug will have to work to explain the difference, up to a point. For now, as I said, they're going to run them as separate companies. So we're not going to see instant differences.
Didn't Flickr back in the day, didn't they do a deal with Getty Images where they were basically combing through user accounts and looking for images that would work in Getty and then offering you an invite into Getty if they dubbed your images worthy?
Right? I know we talked about that a couple of years ago on TWiP, and I think it was Flickr.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Interesting. I wonder if that agreement is still in force, and I wonder if it's going to carry over into the SmugMug universe. So, interesting. Lots of stuff changing. All right. Next question is, so Brian Coate wants to know what streaming software or system I'm using to run the show. I can't tell you that. No, I'm kidding. No, it's actually open source software that I'm using to run the entire show, or at least the switching part. It's a piece of software called OBS, Open Broadcaster Studio. Just Google it, you'll find it. It works on Mac, Windows, Linux, etc., and it lets you do. It's free because it's open source, but it actually rivals a lot of paid software for this kind of thing. It's the software essentially that gamers use when they're live streaming their games and doing all that kind of stuff. I'm just using it for a more, let's say, pedestrian use. So yeah, definitely check that out. Here's another one from WorkPix. He says, "What? This is for you, Craig." He says, "What's next or new in the LensBaby world? Any more fisheyes up and coming?"
Fisheyes. I love fisheyes too. Maybe there's.
I love that pregnant pause. That's
always a possibility.
That's really well done, Craig.
Yeah, he's always frustrated, ladies and
gentlemen. Yeah, we've actually got. We were just looking at the roadmap out to 2020, and I can't tell you any of it. So, but it's exciting. I'm happy about the range of products that we're able to bring out. Not only addressing the historical, the community that has rallied around the optic swap system and our special effects lenses to date, but I think we've got some things that will bring us to new audiences. So I'm excited to get those out there, and I think maybe August 7th might be just as a little teaser. I may hear from marketing in the morning about that, but sometime in the next several months, there should be one that we're all pretty excited about.
Very cool. Well, that's good. Well, give us one of the questions I asked you, Craig, during the interview, the one-on-one interview we did, was how you came up with the company name, LensBaby. For the people that are watching this, LensBaby is one of the well-known companies in the photography industry. Shed some light on where LensBaby came from.
So I'd been showing these lenses, these creations that were hacked together to my friends, and they all wanted one. And then I started teaching workshops with Kevin Kubota and taught 3 workshops, and nearly everyone wanted one there. And this was over the course of about 6 or 8 months. 60 or so, maybe 80 people in those workshops were excited. So I came home from that last workshop and told my wife, I said, we gotta have a name for this thing. And she said, "We'll describe it." My wife's a copywriter, or was doing copywriting at the time, and she, it's. She said, "How's it different than other lenses?" I said, "It's small. It's kind of cute. It's kind of, does crazy things." And I said, "I want to say baby lens, but that takes me to Caddyshack, or to Baby Ruth, and then Caddyshack and Bill Murray in the pool." And, and she's just sitting there going, "Okay, shut up. I've got the name." And I stopped talking, and she said LensBaby. And it was just like, boom, that's it. And, it's a crazy name. We've had people come and say, "We'll help you with your company, but only if you change the name." But it has gotten recognition. And my kids always ask, why was a certain company or a certain product called a certain thing? I said, well, they had to call it something. And we had to call it something. And it was that something that really resonated with where I was at the time, and where Sherry was at the time. And ultimately my business partner came on, and we've, yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling now, but
no, it works. I can't imagine the
Baby
company
Ruth,
being named anything else,
right.
So
there we go.
It works. I mean, it's kind of like, I'm sure Steve Jobs, when he and Steve Wozniak named the company Apple, people are like, Apple?
I know,
why?
right?
Or Google, why would you name it Google? Or Adobe, why Adobe? And now they're household names, right?
Yep.
So yeah,
we're not quite there yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah, my friend, I have a friend, Troy Miller. He's on the show from time to time, and he's struggling with naming a entity right now. So we had a very similar conversation about pick whatever you want, man, because if it's successful, it'll become a household name.
Yeah,
I think Craig got lucky with having his wife give him that advice, because years ago I was developing a product. We had 2 versions, and somebody came in to design the packaging and asked what the difference was. And we said, well, this one's faster, that one's slower. The packaging for the slower one had a cover of elephants. that was as though slower was a feature. I mean,
wow.
You have to be careful.
It's for meditation.
I love it.
I think LensBaby stuff is great. It's a lot of fun. I guess people are taking it's become more serious now. I mean, it used to be just for fun, but I think now the products that you guys are producing are worthy of serious consideration for serious photography. And I think that's great. And still fun.
And still fun.
I dabble in similar things. You've seen this stuff, Craig, I'm sure, online. People who take old Russian lenses and do strange things to them. So I bought some of these old Russian lenses and took the front elements out and reversed them.
Sure.
Oh, geez.
Great stuff. You probably get swirl or chromatic aberrations, or
crazy.
all of the above, spherical aberrations. It's great.
Yeah.
That's where it all started for me. It was just playing with optics.
A lot smarter to buy LensBabies.
Thanks, Doug.
Gentlemen, we are at the top of the hour. There's been a fantastic show. We talked about, I don't know if we got any traction on SmugMug and Flickr and the integration or the acquisition. I think overall the consensus is a good thing. Otherwise, Flickr was dying or close to death on the vine, and SmugMug is thriving and kind of brought them into the fold. So hopefully the two together can make something larger and more important than the individual entities, right? So, and then the other thing we talked about was deep fake and fake news, and the scary proposition of AI or software generated reality video, especially real time, because I could do a virtual TWiP, right? Or I could be, name your host. I could be Anderson Cooper on the show and just say, pop up in here and boom, hey,
you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's that my brain still spins on the possibilities of that kind of stuff. There's so much.
It's gonna be a wild ride.
It's gonna be a wild ride. Craig, where can people go to see more of the stuff that you're working on? Obviously, LensBaby.com to see the product line and all that stuff. But what about some of the personal stuff?
Oh, personal stuff. Most of the personal stuff is shot with LensBaby prototypes, and so I don't get to share it. But what does come out eventually is a lot of it is through the Facebook page, the Facebook/Seeing a New Way is the LensBaby Facebook page, and that's probably the best way into the LensBaby environment, and to learn about what we're doing and see what's coming next and whatnot. So
fantastic. It's facebook.com/CNA New Way, all put together.
That's the one.
Excellent. All right, Doug Kaye, what about you, man? Where can people go to connect with you?
Well, you can go to my DougKaye.com site, Doug Kaye. That happens to be a SmugMug portfolio site, and it's woefully out of date. And I really need to update it. It's like 2 years out of date, so I got to update that. It'll be good. And mostly what I post is on Facebook, where I'm just Doug Kaye.
You can find me there. And you're still
Doug.Kaye, I think, on Facebook.
And you're doing the podcast with Gordon still, right?
Yes, that's right. Silly for me forgetting it. Go to cameralabs.com. You can see the reviews not only the reviews that I do with Gordon, which are all video, but Gordon's detailed, lengthy reviews, which are probably state of the art in camera and lens reviews.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gordon is kind of the Wikipedia of camera reviews in terms of exhaustiveness. I love it.
And what a memory the guy has an amazing memory.
Yeah.
He'll say, "Oh yeah, I remember that lens on that camera." Just crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's like, that lens. Yeah, that was released in 1980. Had a little bit of chromatic aberration in the upper right-hand corner. He's that guy. That's cool. All right, guys. Well, we're at the end of another episode. Thanks, guys, for joining again. And thanks to all the folks that participated in the chat room. If you want to keep up with everything This Week in Photo, obviously, you can just head over to thisweekinphoto.com. If you want to subscribe to our podcast, just go to thisweekinphoto.com/subscribe. And obviously on YouTube, we're youtube.com/thisweekinphoto. You'll find all the stuff that we do. It was great to have all you guys in here. It was great for all the questions, and it was great to have your insights. I'm more horrified than ever about a lot of this stuff, but it was a great conversation for my confirmation bias about my horror, right? So all right, guys, listeners and watchers, you know what time it is. It is time to take that lens cap off. This is TWiP.